Welcome back to Adventure Repeats. Glad to see you here. So if this is your first time here, make sure you like the video, comment, tell us what you think, tell us what you want to hear about, and subscribe. We got a lot of great content coming, a lot of great content already on the channel, so be sure to check it out. So, what are we doing today? On this 2024 Chevrolet 2500HD, we are putting a leveling kit on it, or just cranking the torsion bars up and leveling it out. So, first bought the truck, super happy with it. It's at pretty close to level. But over time and greasing the suspension because I had no grease in it, the front end settled down, which is fine. That's not a big deal. But the way I like to have it is right up a little bit higher, because when it settles down, it sits on the bump stops. I hate when trucks sit on the bump stops on the front end, because that way when your suspension goes up, you're pretty much just transferring all that force right into the frame rail, so the ride gets a little rougher. Yeah, it's great because you feel more stable, so when you make turns, you don't have body roll and things like that, but I like to have a smoother ride, so the suspension actually takes up the bumps instead of the frame. And with plow season coming up, I need to build a new plow bracket for this truck itself. So I need to have the ride height where it needs to be, so when the plow goes on it, I build that plow bracket and it squishes and settles down. It's fine. I can't build at a lower height and crank it up later, because also when you level these trucks out or lift the front suspension, you need to get an alignment done afterwards, because your geometry will change. So today we're going to cover what it takes to go through it and how to level one of these out. First thing I do is start with baseline measurements. I start in the back end, and I actually use a piece of masking tape, and I just use the bottom of the tape with the tape measure and give myself a mark. So at 42 inches from the bottom of this tape at this location, this vertical location, measure straight through the center of the wheel well, it will be 42 inches. And it is actually, I marked it the same on the other side, so I have a baseline. I also do this at the front end as well. But this one I use the tape at the very bottom, because that's how I like to measure them, is off the bottom of the wheel well. And 40 inches at the bottom of the tape at this center line, right down through the center of the wheel. That is my baseline measurement. So up front's 40, and the back I got that 42 measurement, and that's where I start from there. So next I do is adjust the torsion bars from underneath and work my way up, and do it slowly, keep measuring it and checking it out. I do try to find as flat and level space as I can. This is actually a pretty close driveway, so not too upset. And I also mark the tire spaces where I park it, so I can always put it back in the same spot, because after you make some large amount of adjustments, it's always wise to actually go drive it down the driveway, drive it back, give a chance for the suspension to resettle in its new location, to verify your measurements when you're measuring it out. So I'll show you where to measure, adjust it at right now. So down here underneath the truck, these are your torsion bars. You have one on each side. This side controls the passenger side suspension, the other one controls the driver's side. You have these keys that I talked about in my free lift kit video, and there is the bolt right there. We are going to turn that bolt in to push that key up to lower the lower control arm and raise this front suspension. You can see these bolts on both sides. I like to start with putting a mark on them to always know which way is facing forward, so that way when I turn these in, I'm turning them equal amounts on both sides, because ideally spring rate should always be the same. So turning them equal amounts, make sure you get an extra level of verification for making sure you do adjustments evenly. So you can see on there, I just use a blue mark facing forward, and that's all there is. I will sometimes add red grease or some kind of grease to the thread, so as I'm turning it in, it stays nice and smooth. You don't need to pick up the front end of the suspension or anything like that to do this adjustment, as long as it's new and in good condition. I have a 13/16 socket. You don't need a deep well, and I just have a long ratchet just to get some extra torque on it. So just like turning in a normal bolt, you'll sit there and turn it in clockwise, pushing it up, and that will cause the front suspension to raise on the truck. And we just make adjustments and test every time. So I like to go one turn at a time on both sides. I'll do the first one here, and do the next one there. Check my measurements, then I'll go backwards. I'll start on the other side and go this side next. That way if the suspension's binding at any point in between, it has a chance to try to even out. And after some large adjustments, I'll still drive it down the driveway and drive it back, park in the same spot, then recheck measurements. So at the front suspension here, this is the back side of the control arm. This little brown thing right there, that is the front bump stop. It does have a little pocket it sits and rides in. My challenge was, when the truck was just sitting at ride height, it was right at the bump stop. there was no up travel give. So now that I've leveled it out, or at least where I want it to be, it's not perfectly level. We do still have some rake forward, but now it's not touching. So now the front suspension can actually do what it wants to do and cycle upwards before it hits that rubber and then transfers all that pressure up into the frame, which then you feel it in the cab, and that's just harder on everything. So let the suspension do its thing, let it give some, and go from there. So that's where we're talking about the bump stop, always riding at the control arms and where it's at. So hopefully this quick video was helpful for you and leveling out your 2024 Chevrolet 2500 HD. Now, in the end, we did not get perfectly level between front and rear dimensions. I actually still kept a 1/2 inch forward rake on this truck. So if you put anything in the bed of the truck, it doesn't sit there and look like it's squatted on the back end. So it's not a big deal. And always remember, close counts on this. You don't have to be in perfect, precise dimensions because there's obviously tolerances across everything. So you can measure in different parts of the frame rail and different things like that. But it all changes depending on weight distribution. You have a full tank of fuel or a half tank of fuel or no fuel, that makes up in difference in how the suspension moves. So close count. So if you're within a 1/16 or an 1/8 inch, I wouldn't be too concerned. I still moved mine up evenly on both sides, the same amount of turns, which I went up about 4 turns. And I'm fairly happy with that. So it works out for me. And remember, like the video, comment, tell us what you think, tell us what you want to hear about, and subscribe. We got a lot of great content coming, a lot of great content already on the channel, so be sure to check it out. And remember, have a great adventure.